Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast. If you are looking for an episode all about whether Ange is good enough, if he's not good enough, why we lost to Fulham, sorry, we're probably not going to cover that because you've probably heard it 1,000 times in other shows. Instead, we're going to be doing some of our hottest Tottenham takes, and we will, though, touch a little bit on kind of where we are and what we think we need to do after the international break to carry on this journey with Ange Postecoglou. But we've got some brilliant takes coming up that I'm excited to discuss with you. And by the end of it, we may even make Johnny smile. How about that? Johnny?
Whoa, hot
doable?
take. Hot
Here we
take
go.
right there.
Already. Yeah, pretty unlikely, mate.
And on top of Misery Guts, Johnny, we have Super Sai in sunny Basel. How are you, Si?
doing, mate? How you doing? Yeah, all good, mate. All good.
Good. I'm doing good. And we have the wonderful Deej over in sunny San Francisco. How are you, Deej?
I'm doing okay. We are far enough removed from the most recent Tottenham disaster class to for me to build my
Glad we got these two on, Jim.
build myself
Gosh,
up
you
bit by bit.
Right, moving on to the main content of the show. It wasn't that bad a performance. All right, we'll get to that bit later because people will be saying, yeah, it was. I disagree. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Let's just jump into some of the questions because I think they're really... We've asked basically all our members to send in their hottest takes on Tottenham, and we're going to discuss whether we agree with them or not, and whether they're even that hot at all. We'll start with Vaz, guys. He says, my hot take is that Archie Gray is a very talented youngster. No, that's not all. But he is a rubbish centre-back. Oof. Is that a bit harsh?
Yeah.
Is he a rubbish centre-back? But has he got a point? Like, is he a really good player, but you put Danso in and suddenly Danso does look like Maldini?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because he's out of position. He doesn't really play center back, and you don't really want to be overly tough on the guy. And I think he has like shown a lot of like the non-footballing attributes you need for a center back. Like I think his leadership skills we talked about a lot on the podcast, and I think that that's something that he's done really, really well. But I think that he definitely there's definitely like a lot to be improved on if he were to be a full-time center back, which I don't think he will be. Like his aerial numbers are just absolutely atrocious and have led to, and there are times where his positioning is off as well. It's to be expected. He's an 18-year-old who doesn't play center back, and center backs, even when they're like brought up from like youth level playing center back, generally don't hit the ground running in a league like the Premier League until their mid-20s. So what you're saying, Deej, is he's a terrible centre back, but he's really good. He's doing a really good job playing centre back because he's not a centre back, but he's a really bad centre back. I wouldn't even say really bad. Really bad might be a stretch, but he's not like a top solid 6 level center back. He's like a step below solid. He's flimsy.
He's flimsy.
But we love you, Archie. I wouldn't sell him for £100 million. That's how much I like him.
I mean, yeah, I just put him in the midfield.
That's a question. What's he worth? Real Madrid come in tomorrow. What's the minimum you think Daniel Levy goes, let's talk?
I think if they give us their propaganda wing, I think that's probably a fair trade. If we get Real Madrid's propaganda wing, so we get all the press that Real Madrid normally gets, and they get Archie Gray, I think that's probably a fair trade.
Sai, Johnny.
So what are we in the hole for here? About 40 mil?
We paid 40 mil for him, yeah.
Yeah, so we're in the hole for 40. You got to be looking at treble that if you want to.
Treble? Ooh,
yeah, you got to treble it, mate.
Mil.
I mean,
more than Gareth Bale.
He's 18. He's a fantastic centre back. What's he going to be like as a 6?
Yeah.
As I think you're a bit harsh with the rubbish there. I get your point, but yeah. And comparing him to Danso, I'm not too sure it's too fair either. What's Danso? 26.
Yeah.
And built like a brick outhouse.
Yeah, it's completely different.
I think that you might be comparing.
Yeah, that's kind of the
point is, last season he played right back for Leeds United for most of the season as well.
Yeah.
So even there, like when he's supposed to be a midfielder, right? But for us, he's barely played in midfield all season. I think he's played, according to Transfermarkt, it's 3 times this season. 19 times at centre back, 7
that
right
makes him
back,
invaluable, Johnny,
and 5 at left back. Exactly. But we don't. All we know is he's a really, really good footballer.
Oh,
we don't know how good he. We don't know how good he's going to be in midfield, which you assume he is going to be a midfielder. But he's come in and at that age, under that pressure, under this spotlight that he's had with all of the injuries around. Like I think he's done really, really well. And like I understand where the questions come from and everything, but it would be incredibly harsh to be judging him like as a centre half in the context of all of the other players that he's been surrounded by and the way he's been shifted and all of the pressure that Tottenham is under. I think he's done really, really well. Yeah, I agree with the points Deej made from the technical point of view, which he's far more insightful than I am. And certainly you can see issues with the positioning, but nobody's going to... and anyone who knows Spurs and have watched him this season is what Sai said is not a joke. I don't think we'd get that much for him, but I think you'd be definitely looking for 100 mil. You would, because look at the age he is, and obviously he's English, so but we wouldn't sell him, and he's not going to be sold, so it's kind of an academic point.
And I think the way that he's taken to the different positions and he's slotted in, and he comes from a football family. He knows the score. His great uncle, his grandfather, all footballing people. They've got him grounded. He knows what he needs to do to be part of a team. That shows, like in bundles. And I think the midfield part from him, the bit that really impressed me is the way that you see at times that he brings the ball out from that centre-half position, almost like a 6. And he travels with the ball really nicely. He's got a great passing range. And yeah, these are the types of players him, Berival, you just don't want to let them go because they are 2 or 3 years' time. They are superstars.
Unbelievable, yeah.
You want a hot take? You want a hot take? England captain in 5 years' time.
Yeah, that's my hot take, Si. Stolen it, mate. But I agree. I don't think it's that hot. I think it's just a lukewarm take. But this goes on to our next question from Alistair. He said, despite I'm going to reword a little bit, Alistair, but basically to make it flow with the last bit, but it's what you've said. Alistair says he disagrees with the majority when they said we should have signed more senior players. He thinks we should sign more kids. He thinks we should double down, nay, triple down on buying kids, sacrifice the next 3 or 4 years to become the world's greatest superpower of young starlets. I completely exaggerated your question there, Alistair, but that was the premise of what you were saying.
That's nothing to do with me, that question. That's not a hot take. That's made up.
But the premise of his question was he actually thinks we should double down on signing youngsters and continue that path and not go and sign a load of senior players like people are asking, basically. So, anyone disagree with that, firstly?
I think it's
Johnny
kind of...
disagrees.
I'll let Johnny speak on it as the senior.
Yeah, thanks. As the
senior
second
grump.
I'm going to do my Donald Trump here. As the second most senior, but I am the most senior grump because Sai's like ridiculously jolly. I think it's good that what's happened, and my view in terms of like you're talking about in 4 years being like some kind of like world dominating superpower. I know we don't want to go down the whole Ange thing too much at all, but I'm just going to say this because I've not really spoken about this for a couple of weeks, but I personally still am of the opinion that what we were talking about before, you guys were talking about before, in terms of where we need to finish, and in order for Ange to be around next year. Like personally, unless things go worse, then I'm keeping him, purely because I just think that we have to actually have some cojones, and we have to continue with the project and give this man the chance, because like changing the manager is just going to be more deferring of potential progress. I get people's impatience, and I get why people are really skeptical, and then there's things that he's done and all. I don't like the way he reacted in the tunnel, but I don't know the whole story, and apparently there is more to it than what's been seen, blah 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 blah. But getting back to the concept of the youth, so like it doesn't make sense. Like if you've got any kind of staff in any organization, you don't want to have like a whole bunch of rookies together, because the young guys obviously are going to benefit from playing with the older guys around them. So Sonny may not be as impactful in terms of his playing impact than he was a year or two ago. But like the impact that he is making, I have to use the word impact 3 times in a minute there. The effect that he has, his presence has, and on players around him is going to be massive. And the same with potentially Maddison, with Romero, and with Vicario, and even Danso. And we need more senior players. Solanke's come in this season, and he's maybe coached better than somebody who's much younger, who might have the same attributes. So I just think it's a logical thing, and in any organization you need a balance. That's all. But I definitely think that what's happened, we're going to get a benefit from it. I think that's a well-versed theory. So, but I don't see the point. Like, just like, oh yeah, so we're going to sell Sonny, and we're just going to bring in another 19-year-old.
He's saying let the Van de Vens and the Romeros stay.
Yeah, but
jack up the kids below them.
Well, but if you bring in players in, then players have to go out. In terms of the numbers. So, and there are senior. Obviously, Werner's going to be gone. Like, so that's a Werner's gone. Okay, but nobody's really going to be a downgrade on Werner. One would hope. But Jesus, the concept of that.
Where are we going?
And the other part is, you got Mikey Moore, who is and Vuskovic and Jamie Donnelly's. I mean, probably not going to be coming in and being a first team player next year. You've got your video about Vuskovic, which came out earlier, Jim, which I've yet to see, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. So there's an awful lot of young guys coming in anyway. So what we're going to just have this insane scenario, and then what happens with those boys when they're like 24, 25? Are we? You have to keep freshening things up. So you always need to have a balance of sort of across the demographic anyway in any squad.
I think what you're trying to get at here, Johnny, tell me I'm wrong, is you and me, I'm with you. I really want Ange to work out, but he's got no hope if we just load him up with kids and get rid of all the senior players.
Obviously, yeah.
Si, do you think we should just turn it into Harlem Spurs trotters of kids?
Harlem Spurs trotters, yeah, coming out to sweet Georgia Brown. Yeah, I think probably what you need is you certainly need some level of experience up the spine of your team. So keeper, centre half, central midfield, centre forward, I would say. To help the kids come along, to help the kids understand how to control the game. Now, what you've also got is this season that our kids, what do you mean by mature? So, you've had Gray, Berival, Udogi, Spence, Kinski. These guys come in and they've probably grown in maturity in the last 9 months to a year than what they would have done in 3 years had they been playing bit parts in the team. So I don't think maturity is just about age. Maturity is about ability to play, attitude and experience. And these guys are getting that. That said, if you start looking at some of the players who potentially might be leaving in the summer, let's take, for example, Bissouma. I think, with Ange calling him out a few times and just calling him out for lack of application, not lack of ability. I think that the writing's on the wall for him. As you say, Johnny Werner, absolutely. Do you bring in youth for that? I would tend to say let's see if we can bring in some solid experience. And with the youth that's coming through, I think I'm sort of like violently agreeing with Johnny here, really. With the youth that's coming through and what's there, I think solidifying that with some top quality experience, first team ready now, I think that would probably be the way that I would go. 3-4 top quality signings in the summer.
And the other point as well, in terms of bringing in players who've got more experience, and there's a fair point you say there, it's not necessarily about like chronological age, but obviously experience and maturity. Ideally, if we could bring in players who've actually had success and have been tested and have come through and can, impart that experience on the squad, because we don't really have that. And that's something that, other than Vicario, as we've spoken about before, in terms of the leadership aspect, that's something where there's a really significant deficit, I think, at the moment.
I think where you get the challenge there, Johnny, getting players who have had success to come to us means that they're on the downward trajectory 100%. Usually.
Yeah,
and that's
savage.
You want, because if they've had success and they're on an upward trajectory, in all honesty, they'll be looking at the next, just that next level up from us, like top 4.
But even the likes of like Ivan Perisic, that was unfortunate the way that all worked out with the injury. But somebody of that, he's still a quality player. And what we saw of him,
fair point.
There were, there might be an option for somebody like that. Who's played at the highest level and has won things.
Timo Werner.
Yeah.
Right, guys. On to the next one. I think we've done that bit to a fine level of detail. The next one is from Sean. Are you ready? Are you ready for this one? It's coming up on the screen.
Hi, Jim. Sean here. Big hi to the rest of the community as well. Just been thinking on hot take, and kind of comes from the wider discussion about the mentality of the fan base. And I think that there are issues amongst the mentality of our fan base. And I think in particular to the development and encouragement and the integration of our young players from our academy over the years, going back a long, long time. When we think about other clubs like Manchester United and Manchester City and Liverpool, when their young players come in, their crowd supports them so much more. They might make mistakes, but they just get supported. Whereas, unless they're like someone like our man here, the blessed Glenn Hoddle, we seem to make them the scapegoat of everything that's wrong with the football club. And I wonder whether this, the blame game that seems to come so quickly to us is stifling the development of our players. Just a thought, just a little idea I've been knocking about. I know mentality is a big thing for Ange, and that's why I like him. He's trying to instill in us a winning mentality.
So, guys, to Sean's question there, what do you think? Are our fans culpable? Are we? We're not saying every fan, but is our culture different to other clubs, and do we contribute to making it more difficult for the players, or is it just something in football that is just, unfortunately, it's just part of the modern game? What do you guys think?
I think it's probably the latter, to be honest. I definitely am of the opinion that our fan base doesn't necessarily help our team, but look at like the way that like Manchester United fans act. If you want to pick out another like big club example, like they have basically ruined. I don't want to say that they haven't ruined. The Xerxes and Hoyland have not been fantastic for them, but they have not done them any favors. They have not given them any support. They have been basically, I'm pretty sure I saw that Xerxes got like booed off the pitch, which if you're in your first season for a club, that's absolutely brutal to be having there. So I think it would be nice if we did support our players more, especially our young ones. But I think it's just like a wider symptom of fandom in general. And also I think it's easier to support your younger players when you're winning. And we're just not really doing that right now, which is why I picked United as the example, because they're another team that's not winning. I think if Arsenal were in our position and Lewis Skelly got his second red card, I don't think that they would be as positive about him as they're being right now. Just like if we were in fourth, I think we would have a lot more time for players like Mikey Moore to get more time. Even players that aren't youth players like Basuma, I think we would have more time for, because despite their lackluster performances, maybe we're winning, and like winning kind of cures all evils.
Yeah, it definitely does.
It is really as simple as that, though, isn't it? It's like, I think
isn't there a bit though, Jim, about up until the last few seasons where we've started to hear about some of these wonder kids that are sitting in the under 17s, under 18s, under 21s. We're actually managing to keep hold of some of these kids now because we've got ourselves in line in terms of our pay structure for that age group, etc., and we're able to hold on to some talent. And you might start seeing the dividends of that activity, in the next 2 or 3 years' time. Whereas before, I think we had a little bit of a reputation of being tight, not paying the going rate, and losing some of that talent. I think that's one factor. And then back to DG's point, I think the fact that, Sean, great point about, Liverpool, Man City, Man United. But when they've been supporting their youth coming through, they've been getting success with that as well. And we haven't. And I think that some of the fans' attitude and ways of being to the players is born out of a huge amount of frustration about the overall team and the overall success of the organisation, not whether that individual's a decent youth player or not. Well, no, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not trying to defend that, but I think it's a factor.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, like I was thinking when you're reading out the question, listening to Sean, I wouldn't say that necessarily it's young players that are scapegoated, to be honest with you, because if you're looking at players at sort of at the end of the Conte, it was like Emerson Royale, Davinson Sanchez, Eric Dyer. They're probably up at the top of the fans' ire on a weekly basis.
Dropped into there at some point, didn't
definitely as well. And then in the Ange era, like I would say, obviously Timo Werner is public enemy number one, okay, which is legitimate. Although you still don't abuse your players.
No,
I mean, like, and that's the bottom line. We go there, and you might be frustrated, and you might like tear your hair out if you have any, but you're still gonna like want to. Still got to support your players regardless of it's not going to have any positive impact. But probably also got Maddison, who I've certainly aimed a few volleys at over the last few months. Basuma, Sonny as well. Pedro Porro gets quite a lot of stick, and the youngest player who is continually getting panned is probably Brennan Johnson, because even though he's actually got stats and there's a whole other conversation around him. And then you also look at last season, a player who got so much stick but is now one of the fans' favourite, and that's Dejan Kulusevski, who is maybe still on the younger end of the scale age-wise, but he's obviously quite a lot of experience and been successful overseas and stuff. But I think that's an example of a player who is actually, it's not like the fans have decided that it's always somebody's fault. And, unless you're blind, you can't not like really appreciate what he's given the team this season. So I think that there's a bigger picture rather than just like necessarily being young players who bear the brunt of it. They would, one would assume, require the greatest support, and it is still the case that if a player comes on to, they're making their debut, there's usually a really great welcome from them, or if they go off substitute, at the end of the game, they get a great ovation, like Odegaard definitely this season when he started back in September stuff. He was getting a really warm reception because he plays well. So I don't think the fans are like, okay, and there's maybe a difference between fans that go to the games and fans that post things online and stuff.
Yeah.
But undoubtedly, though, having said that, the grief that Emerson Royale and Davinson Sanchez got in the stadium was also palpable. So I don't know. It does really annoy me, and I think it's obviously completely devoid of any common sense, and it's just like they've got a cockerel on their shirt. You want them to do the best you can. If they're going to be playing again, then the last thing they need is to be feeling any extra pressure from their own fans. And maybe that's part of the reason why we've been worse at home than we have been away this season, I think, haven't we? Because it's not been an easy atmosphere for the players to play in as well.
I want to say one more thing before we move on, and I do think for all of the stick we've been giving the match going fans, which I think is probably.
And that's us, by the way. We're match going fans.
Yeah,
so.
Hello, come on.
I'm not giving them stick, by the way. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, but I was just going to say. We've been to use parlance of younger people. We've been subtweeting them about how they treat our players. But I do think that one player that the fan base has treated quite well, as they should have, honestly, is Archie Gray. That we talked about him earlier. He may not be the best center back, but I think that it is good that our fan base writ large has been understanding of the situation that he's been put in and been supportive of his performance, despite him not playing in his preferred position. So I think that, like, if you want an example of our fan base being good towards younger players, I think you don't have to look further than Archie Gray.
Yeah.
And they have been, I would say, someone to say as well, like, the fan base have been really patient overall. Like, but I get why it doesn't look patient for Ange, because they've been patient sitting through the sacking of Poch and that, not getting any transfer budget. They've been patient through Conte, Mourinho, Nuno, Stellini. And unfortunately, it's just come to head, I think, at the worst time possible for Ange, which means there's less patience for this project. And it's compounded by being in a territory of 14th and losing Harry Kane. That's not using Harry Kane, the best player in 15 years, 20 years plus for Spurs, is not Postecoglou's fault, but he's had to deal with the consequence of that. He's had to deal with
And I think the fans have been patient. The certainly the home match going fans have been incredibly patient. And it's not until the last couple of home games that I've started to hear more rumblings about not necessarily Ange out, but people saying there's going to come a point that if things don't start to improve, it becomes untenable. So not saying we've got to get rid of him, but we talked about this before we came on air, didn't we? You know, he's got the international, he's talked about getting the players back. He's talked about the 3-week international break. If we don't start seeing an uptick in performances in the next 2 or 3 games, he's going to come under so much pressure, and I don't want to see him go. I think that I want to see him start next season for sure, and I think a fully fit squad with a full pre-season, then, you know, our players ain't going to the Club World Cup, so they'll get a good break and come back fully fresh, fully revitalised. I think we got the nucleus of something special there. You know, when you look at people like Gray, Berval, what a player, mate, that's going to be. By the way, so how old is he now? 19, I think. Was he 17, Jim? Is he 17? It might be 17. Well, he might have been 17 when we started this pod. But he's going to be a tremendous asset to our team, and I think, you know, I'd love to see Ange be given the time with these players to get there.
Agree.
But if he doesn't kick on after the international break, I think the pressure is going to become immense on him, and I just hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, sorry, Jim. You know, without wanting to get too far down this road, because I know you kind of wanted to avoid this.
Still got one more question to go from Johnny L as well. But no.
Okay, well, I promise I'll only speak for a few seconds. So, like, just the whole business of, I was away this weekend, fortunately, so I did not see the Fulham game. But it's exactly a week tonight since we played at Alkmaar, and that was a really good night. It was a really good performance overall. It wasn't perfect, but it was, you know, it was much better than we've seen, and under a lot of pressure. It was a great night, and we're through to the next round. And then there's all these. There's the odd podcast out. You know, is this the beginning of the new dawn of the new era, and all this kind of, like, you know, the nature of all of these, the sort of narrative around things. It's just so, this flip flops so ridiculously, and then literally 3 days later is like, almost as if that hasn't happened at all, and it's just been a continuous negative experience for us. And there's been a lot of negative experiences. There's been a lot of really bad results, and, like, I think it's completely fair if people are more than skeptical and want the manager change. I totally disagree with that. I don't, obviously, like you were saying before, Jim, the whole personal side of things is completely unsavory and unwarranted. Yeah. But you know, I think it's we should be allowed to have our opinion, and we should respect other fans to have their rights to have their opinion on that, which I disagree with. You know,
if Berval gets that penalty and it's 1-1, it's a different story.
Yeah,
that was a nailed-on penalty.
Well, we were going to finish this episode on the big Ange question of where he is, and what seems to happen is we've continuously just kind of like dipped in and gone, guys, get back out. Go. So we will finish on this topic. I do want to set 10 minutes aside to talk about this topic, but we should probably just do, because I'm also on the tip of my tongue, I'm itching to say something about this, but I want to get Johnny L's question out first, because he also sent one in. Here we go.
Hi, Jim and team. My discussion point is around atmosphere and treatment of players and the manager, both inside and outside the stadium. I do completely get the frustration with Levy and at times with his decisions and the players. But I think we've also got to look a little bit close to home sometimes ourselves as a fan base with regards to criticism. So there's numerous examples of players who've been written off as crap. They're not good enough to play for the club. They're obviously under massive pressure. And these players then move and they go on to flourish at other clubs and win things elsewhere. And I think Kieran Trippier is a great example of that. Obviously had a couple of good seasons with us. The last season, he got a lot of abuse, left, and then has gone on to have a good career elsewhere with Atletico Madrid and also Newcastle. So if we take our WhatsApp group maybe as an example as well, some of the takes on there are ridiculous with respect to players, writing them off after just one game. And the level of expectancy is just crazy. I think Brennan Johnson, he's another example of a player. He's not been in good form recently, but he's also raised abuse both online and also in the stadium, and how it really doesn't help him. It affects his mental health, and also how it really doesn't affect the players. I'm sure it's affecting him again now. And now, obviously, the manager's getting the same. So my question to you all is, are we different and more critical as a fan base? I'm compared to others. I'm honestly not sure, but I do think we can improve both in and out of the stadium, getting behind the team.
So I think it's a point we've kind of been covering, right? It's the same premise of seems to be. It highlights this is you've got two camps in the fan base really at the moment. You've got multiple camps, but you've got the two most extremes, I guess. We're in one, and another group, another is mass frustration on one side, and directing that frustration, understandably, in the only direction you can, which is at the football club. And then you've got the other side saying, we shouldn't be doing that. That's wrong. That's not helping the situation either. But then I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate in the middle. I think, and I put myself in this camp as someone who gets very frustrated at hearing the criticism. I think people like myself make it worse because we also contribute to creating a divide. We also contribute to making those fans, we're telling them they're wrong. We're telling them they're the problem. And then they're telling us we're the problem. And that's never going to result in a constructive conversation or a happy medium. It's just going to result in different camps following different groups of people and a miserable bunch of people who don't get along that support the same football club. That's kind of what I think. Upon reflection, I think I'm part of. But yeah,
I think the frustration point there is, we are largely, the glass half full sort of end of the spectrum, I guess. But to say I'm not massively frustrated with our performances this season is an understatement. Right? But I also understand that there's not a single answer to this complicated situation we're in, right? It's multifactorial. There's lots of stuff going on at the club that we probably don't know about. But even the stuff we do know about, to have one opinion and hang it on one thing doesn't solve the overall problem. Because one thing leads to another, because it's a complex situation. It's a complex organism that is a football club. So am I massively frustrated? Too right I am. I come out of that ground sometimes so angry at what I've seen on the pitch. But there's ways and means of dealing with that, and abusing people is never a good way of dealing with that with that frustration. I think what I like to do, and I think what we try and do, is have a healthy debate, have a healthy level of skepticism, but also seek to understand rather than seek to argue to win, if you know what I mean. I think, I can understand and accept to a certain extent some of the fans' frustrations and anger towards certain situations, and who am I to tell them how to feel? As Ange always says, he's not there to tell us how to feel. It's up to us how we feel. But I just like to take a little bit more of a step back and try and understand a little bit more about what's going on, rather than knee-jerk reactions and diving into abusing of players and trying to find a simple answer to a very, very, very complex situation.
Yeah. And
just sorry, dude. Just with the
Johnny's feeling passionate on this one tonight.
No, I just what I think I know where you're coming from, Jim, and I think you're right to an extent, because I think we do need to be tolerant, like I said a minute ago, about the fact that other people, obviously, there's fans that have been going to Spurs for way longer than me. I'm literally on my third season as a season ticket holder, but that's not because if I lived down the road, then it would be a different situation. Coming over from Ireland, it costs an awful lot of money. I've got kids and everything else, so it's only really been in those years that I've had the opportunity to do it. So, but like every other fan, like it's a big effort and it's a huge investment of your time, and you wouldn't do that if you didn't care to a stupid extent about the club, right? Okay, it's not just some kind of like little pastime, little hobby that you can like to keep, just to keep you busy. It's something. It's a ridiculous part of your identity. It's a very, very important part of who you are. Okay, and we've all got our own relationship. We've all got our own history and our backgrounds, and I fully respect and I'm in awe of what the sacrifices that some people make, which are way beyond anything I've ever done, or probably would ever have the patience to do. So people who go home and away and are spending probably every scrap of money they've got to do it, like they are especially entitled, I think, to be extremely and they're entitled to have a strong opinion as they like. The issue for me is just in this kind of like manner that it's communicated, and that's really what I have a problem with. And I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the previous managers. I was quite happy, but I was very happy when Conte eventually went and stuff. But when he came in, like anybody else, anyone who's in the hot seat, they're your manager, and you want to support them, and you're hoping that this is going to be the person that delivers the good times, blah blah blah. So for me, it's just the way that we're going so pretty aggressively. It's quite significant numbers, seem to be pretty aggressive, very intolerant of those who disagree with their perspective on things, and like the personal kind of thing that goes with that towards other supporters and towards other towards the players they don't like, and of course towards the ownership. That's very long established, and in fairness, that's probably a more legitimate target as well, and the manager is a legitimate target too. But we just don't need to do it by getting so angry, shouting when into a microphone or at each other or from the stands. It's just not going to help. And not some kind of happy clappy idiot who's so naive that it's an emotional thing. When I'm at games, I shout, but I shout maybe at the referee, or I'll shout at opposition players for wasting time. I'm not going to, and I might shout in exasperation like to people whoever I'm with about like a really bad pass by one of our players or a really stupid mistake by one of our players. But I'm not going to like hurl personal abuse at them or boo them directly. I just don't agree that that's the way to do it. So I think that's the issue really when it comes to the fan base. And I just don't see why people can't like at least have some respect for the fact that I might have the same opinion on them, and that I don't actually want Ange to go immediately. Doesn't mean he's got like a free ticket for life, but I'm entitled to my opinion on that, and it's not coming out of nowhere. I've got a relatively good knowledge of his career, etc. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, I was going to say you will get pelts in the comments though, and that'll be an example of it, right? People won't like that you've got a different opinion, but we've got to face the facts that we're also, and I'm just playing devil's advocate. No, this is as an Ange lover who wants him to stay and be here for the next 6 months. We are also just as much saying that those people's frustrations, they're not handling it right, and they are part of the issue, and like that's us equally on the reverse being the flip side of it in a way. But I get the bit I draw the line at is I agree is the personal vindicative abuse. It's the he's a fat idiot, see you next Tuesday. That player's a useless whatever. That stuff of your own players and your own manager and your own bit, I can't. When the tunnel thing happened, so it was a good point. That video was premeditated. It was being recorded, and then he went to Ange. Yeah. Then he cut out his own abuse of Ange, and then posted the bit of Ange biting back. So someone went out their way to try get that reaction, and got it.
And why? And why, Jim? Because it drives the clicks. It drives the algorithm. Anger drives the algorithm. Good vibes don't drive algorithms. because people react to the shit.
Yeah.
They react to that, and it's like, right, I'm going to say something to that because I don't agree with that. Oh. And then someone else reacts, and like you say, in the comments of this, we'll get some, and we've seen, I think, as our subscription base has grown, we get more and more conflicting feedback in the comments, and do you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
And I try not to bite at those sorts of things as much as I really want to. But I think that there's a social comment here as well around the fact that you can get your voice heard so loudly, so quickly, and so widely is driving some of that these days. Now, you go back to the crap times in the 90s. I saw fights in the stands between Tottenham fans who had conflicting opinions on whether we should stay with Scholar, Venables, or Sugar, or blah blah blah. We forget that those times that the anger was still there. You just didn't see it because there was no way of it being amplified in the way that it gets amplified in this day and age.
Yeah. Deej, you've been itching to say something and you haven't had a chance.
I've been itching to say two things.
You've been so patient with us old men.
I appreciate it.
You've got to remember our attention memories a little shorter.
Facebook, isn't it? That's where it's
he's on the Facebooks, I think you call it, don't you, son?
Facebook.
And the WhatsApp. Go on, Tej. Yes. What are you doing on the Facebooks at the moment?
So basically, I do think that social media plays a big part in our perception of anger in the fan base. But I do think part of it, I do think a little bit of I guess there's been soft criticisms of our atmosphere and how we treat the players. And I think a lot of that, honestly, is when Tottenham has a good spell of play at the beginning of this season and most seasons before, the chant was, oh, when the Spurs, there's something to that effect, something baking up the team. I feel like I've noticed more and more as the season has gone on, at home and especially away, the chant has not been, it's been, we want Levy out. I don't care about Levy. He doesn't care about me. And at that point, you're still in voice. So I guess I can see how you think that you're but I can't imagine that that's very encouraging to the players in the way that a song saying that the whole team is good would do. And maybe I'm being naive. I don't know. I'm not a player. I don't know how they feel. Maybe it doesn't affect them at all. But I feel the idea of the home versus away statistics kind of gives credence to the idea that home support does matter. The other thing I would say is I think it's hard if you're someone who isn't particularly strongly opinionated about the direction of the manager, like Ange, for example, or Ange. I think that I like his ideas. I also am concerned that they potentially were the reason behind our injury crisis. Obviously, I don't know that. I'm not a doctor. And there's been lots of injuries for everyone, and it's possible that we just got ridiculously unlucky. And we also have center backs who just can't stay healthy. That's just a thing that can happen. But it's hard to be in that position where you kind of just want to stick it out. And then I feel like the first stone in the back and forwards are often lobbed by are lobbed by or have been lobbed enough by the people who basically are going to call you an idiot for saying that Ange should stay. And it makes it really hard to be I like Ange. I don't love Ange. I'm not going to sacrifice my life for him. I'm not 110% convinced that he is here to usher in the next reign of Tottenham dominance spanning the next 40 years. That's not my opinion of him. But I find myself getting closer and closer to arguing that side when I talk to people, because that's the only option. You get pushed further to the other side when I hear people talking about how oh, you're a moron if you support Ange. Oh, he has no idea what he's doing. It's clearly not true.
He's tactically inept,
Exactly, stuff like that.
It's those extremes, yeah.
And at the start of his tenure, that was happening. But I feel that was happening, that the media was telling us this, and Tottenham fans were being no, you're wrong. And now it's Tottenham fans are telling other Tottenham fans this, and other Tottenham fans are saying, no, you're wrong. And it's creating a bigger issue. And I don't know. I think if the heat was turned down a little bit, I think we could actually have like a conversation about the merits and the drawbacks of Ange's system. But I just don't think in the age of social media where everything is turned up to 11 all the time that's possible. And it's really hard not to get sucked into those things. But it's also important to remember that those people that you see who have botted likes that are like, oh, Ange is fat and ugly, is like those are not the majority of the Tottenham fan base, even though it might be the majority of what you see on Twitter, because the majority of the Tottenham fan base probably isn't on Twitter. Like they're like out at the pub with their mates, like talking to their friends and being like, what you think about Ange? Oh, I like his play style, but we're a bit loose at the back. Like that's still, I think if you like. Because I think when I talk to my friends about Tottenham, I find the conversation more measured, and I'm sure if you listening, and any of you guys as well, have friends that you talk to about Tottenham, and to an extent even the way that we talk about it in the WhatsApp group chat, where it's kind of insulated from this kind of like social media need for reaction. I think that the takes are more measured, even if the takes aren't what you agree with. And some of them, I think sometimes they do like go too far in terms of slating like players for abuse. But I think in general, I don't know. I just think that it's important to remember that social media is not real life.
Yeah. And I think that the meaning of written communication is in the eye of the reader, not in the fingers of the sender. So you lose all nuance, you lose all meaning. When you're having a discussion like this, you can say, fair enough. Oh, right. There's lots of different nuances in language, whether it's non-verbal communication, whether it's emphasizing different words in a sentence, that actually make people stop, think, maybe debate a little bit more. Like in the ground, you hear lots of conversations that go backwards and forwards. There isn't an argument, but it's 2-3 people. Johnny, when we were sitting there with Jason, or standing there with Jason the other week, and we were having a conversation about, we had some differing views, but we didn't descend into calling each other fat whatevers, because actually, do you know what? There's also a consequence of having a face-to-face discussion. There's no consequence to keyboard worrying. You can say what you want, when you want, how you want, and listen, you take it as you will, and it's a binary thing. It's almost online that you either luck, to DJ's point, you're either 1,000,000% Ange in, and therefore you cannot say anything negative about Ange, because that means you're Ange out. And I see us doing it on this podcast quite a lot, where we preface a criticism of Ange by saying, oh, by the way, I'm Ange in, however.
Yeah, true,
and we do that quite a lot to sort of, because you've got to sort of like you've almost got to state your position on that continuum.
Yeah, you do.
It's like I'm definitely Ange in, but you know what? It's okay to criticise him if he's been crappy in a press conference, or he's made some really shitty substitutions, or. And you lose that nuance, you lose that debate by the Twitterati.
You do. I think that's so fair. That's what people don't realise. It's like, why am I made out to be extreme when I say I think he's got flaws, but I still think he's a very clever guy who's worked his ass off to get where he is?
Are we talking about Johnny now?
Johnny. And I still think if you give him a bit, I think on the grand scheme of things, hit the position of the table isn't all down to tactics. It's down to loads of things. I won't list them all off again for 1,000th time. And I personally feel there's more upside to giving him half of next season to prove it can work than getting rid of him. Now, it doesn't mean I don't think he should have snapped back in a press conference, but I also think, why are we defending the guy who called him a whatever in the stands from our that's just a weird thing to do, to call out your own manager like that and not defend.
Yeah.
But guys, ultimately, we've got Chelsea next. If we beat Chelsea and Southampton, all of this goes away. And he's the Messiah. Yeah. And all you hear is, he's turned a corner, it's clicked, we're going to win the Europa League, let's commit to next season and see how it goes. Iriola's fallen off a cliff now, it's all about Ange again. But you lose to Chelsea, and you scrape through Southampton and you go out the Europa League, and it's a results game.
It's a narrative for people as well, doesn't it?
It's down to the players as well. And clearly, most of them are still firmly behind him. If they want him to stay, the best thing they can do is, even if we don't beat Chelsea, we come out of that game and go, we gave them a bloody good game. And we were really good. And despite Bentancur knocking himself out on a goalpost or something, we would have won that game. Because always the freak thing will happen. We will lose because a meteor will hit the pitch and it will fry Vicario as someone passes the ball back to him, and then they'll just score. It's just how it goes against Chelsea. But
people think that Ange says to Bissouma, could you go out and be really lethargic, give the ball away at every opportunity, and just don't give a shit? Then try doing that, because when you play really well, I'm not up for that. Could you go in and just let the midfield run around you a little bit? There is an accountability for the players there as well, Jim. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I think we should wrap up, but I don't really know what the conclusion is of that podcast. I don't really know. We just we did at the start. We introduced it as, we're not going to be a bunch of rambly old men talking about Ange, and we probably spent 45 minutes rambling about Ange and the situation Tottenham are in.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you gonna? What else? Yeah, I was gonna say, we're not all old, man. Some of us got a little bit more in the tank.
Yeah,
I have longer to wait for Tottenham to win their next major trophy. I've got more time on the clock.
Oh, savage!
Right, cheers. Thanks, Dave.
Pick up the crackers.
To the personal funeral planners tomorrow.
Right to the Jacobs.
God.
Brilliant.
Oh. Very good, boys. Look, it's been lovely to catch up. It's been overdue.
It's been overdue. It has been overdue.
It's been overdue. But it's been nice. Yeah, and if you want to write in some questions for next week's show, you can either go on our website, www.osospurs.com, and you can write in the form there and send us in a question. Or just say hi to us because you're bored. Or abuse us because you don't like us. That's fine. Do what you want. As long as it gets my numbers up, I don't care. In fact, abuse me in there, please.
Like and subscribe for this. Click and abuse. Click and abuse. We don't mind.
I'm very sensitive. Don't do that to me, please.
And if you fill out the form to abuse me, I get your email address so I can spam you. Joking.
He's very good.
I won't do that. I don't actually get your email address. I'm only joking. If you want to be in the WhatsApp group and all that kind of stuff, you can also be a member for as little as $1.99 a month. In the thing.
Go.
And you get an extra 2 videos a week from us.
Oh.
2 videos a week.
Wow. And all the benefits that goes along.
And all the benefits that go with that. Right. Up the bloody Spurs, boys.
Come on, you bloody Spurs.
Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.